How we doing? How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today, correction or crash? There are some new opportunities in the housing market here in Denver, and we're here to talk about them, starting right now. All right, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Evertson. Listen, if you're interested in learning all the ins and outs, pros and cons to moving to or around the Denver metro or Front Range area, then this is a channel for you. So that subscribe button and notification icon you see on your screen, make sure you click on that as I'm dropping new videos for you each and every week. And as much as I try to be a little informative here on camera, I'm also a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado and team with some of the state's most talented realtors. And we're helping people move here each and every day. So the number and email you see, know that I am always the person answering your phone calls, answer your texts, answer your emails. There, winning if you need me. Now that we're done with that fun-filled stuff, let's get to what we're here for, and that is, do we have a correction or a crash coming in Denver? And what are some of the best opportunities for home buyers in the Denver housing market? All right, so while the majority of this conversation is going to be about the state of buying or selling real estate in the Denver metro area, unless you've been living in a cave or perhaps rent-free in your parents' basement for too long, you are well aware of the fact that the cost of housing has been on the rise for several years, and really gasoline was thrown on that fire during the pandemic. During 2020 through the beginning of 2022, when mortgage interest rates were at the lowest they had ever been historically. And during this time, we saw homes selling in hours, not even days, let alone weeks. We saw sellers getting the highest price they could possibly get and not having to give a single thing in return to buyers. You want it, give me all your money, close when I tell you to, do what I say you gotta do, and then maybe I'll give you this house compared to the 20 or 30 other offers I'm getting on this house. Now you follow that up with mortgage interest rates starting in the summer of 2022 being increased to levels that we hadn't seen in multiple decades. So we go from interest rates in the 2s and 3s to within months, we are in the 6s, gradually the 7s, and at times over the last 2 years, we've seen rates get even close to the 8s. And so mortgage payments during that same period of time skyrocket. Anybody looking at a home goes from looking at payments that might be in the low $2,000 range to suddenly looking at payments that are going above $4,000, $5,000 a month. And it freezes the market. Now, it didn't necessarily freeze the market all at once. There were still a handful of sellers who would put their home on the market and still a handful of buyers who wanted to find a new place. But as rates continued to hover in that high 6%, low 7% range, it really hindered a lot of sellers from putting their home on the market, and it hindered a lot of people from being able to qualify to buy a home themselves. But we're finally seeing light at the end of the tunnel. In a recent speech, the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said that they see the path forward. They see the way that both the economy is responding and how inflation is responding. They see that the job market is weakening. They see that inflation is relatively under control, that we're seeing solid trending data on inflation. And with that coupling, again, with the job market weakening, with unemployment going as high as 4.3%, that they can start to lower interest rates. And there's a fair amount of certainty that we'll see that first rate cut in September. Now, mortgage interest rates tend to act in advance of what the Federal Reserve is going to do. Mortgage rates actually tend to follow headlines and emotions and what people say more than they actually follow with data. So over the last month to month and a half, we have seen interest rates drop from where they were in the low to mid 7% down to the mid 6s. We've caught almost a full % of interest rate. And during that same time, we've seen the 10-year Treasury drop to a yield of around 3.83, which is the lowest it's been. And coupled with that drop, there is a spread between the 10-year Treasury and mortgage interest rates. And that spread is starting to decrease. So as the 10-year Treasury comes down, and we also see that spread shrink, that drives interest rates even lower. Now, there are a lot of experts, I humbly include myself in this comment, who believe that the September cut will come and that we probably won't see a lot of changes in mortgage interest rates yet. We may see it if, one, the cut in September is larger than anyone expects, or if we see additional cuts during November and December meetings. But the great news overall is that we can anticipate that interest rates have seen their ceiling and that they will continue to gradually decrease. So what does all this mean? Well, we have to look at really what has occurred over the last 48 plus months nationwide, but we're going to focus on the Denver metro area. So if we go back to February of 2020, Zillow reported that the average home sold for $478,000. That was actually up 4.9% from the same month the previous year. Now, fast forward to July of 2024, and the same report says that single-family homes sold in the month of July sold for an average of $784,000, and the median sales price during that same period was $657,000. So whichever you want to base your thought process and theories over, you're looking at between a $200,000 to $300,000 price increase over a 4-year span. Now, obviously, the vast majority of that increase occurred between February of 2020 and the summer of 2022. For the most part, things have leveled off. But still, that is a ridiculous amount of appreciation over a very short period of time. And because of home prices increased so much, and because rates followed, prices have, for the most part, leveled off in the Denver area. We haven't seen nearly as much appreciation as we're used to over the last couple years. And this year, we're starting to see something that we've been waiting literally over a decade for, and that is an increase in active listings on the market. So as of the making of this video, there were roughly 10,500 homes for sale. To give you a comparison of when the market was at its hottest, around January or February of 2022, there were periods of time where there were less than 2,000 homes in the entire Denver metro area on the market. Now, 10,500 plus homes on the market represents the most that we have seen in over a decade. What it also means is that Denver has roughly 3 months of inventory, and this is a number that the real estate world loves to use. How many months of inventory? For the longest time, Denver had 1 month or less. The idea being that if no new homes came to market, how long would it take for buyers to gobble up all of the homes? So right now, based on these analytics, they're saying it would take 3 months for Denver to buy up all these homes. What makes this even more fascinating is that you're not necessarily seeing a ton of new listings coming to market. Sure, there are people putting their homes on the market, and especially as interest rates come down, it is incentivizing more sellers to think about selling their home, potentially buying something else, or moving to a new location in general outside of the city or outside of the state. But these homes that are coming to market that are so used to selling, again, in the first weekend, or the first couple weeks, they're staying on market longer. You're seeing homes that are staying on for 30, 60, 90 days. You're starting to see some price reductions where homes are dropping that sales price by $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 or more. And along with these price decreases, you're seeing more and more sellers pay for things for buyers, such as buying their rate down, either permanently or temporarily, or both. You're seeing them pay for closing costs, and you're starting to see them pay for repairs, new roofs, new sewer lines, new AC units, new furnaces and water heaters. Now, to see the contrast between what was occurring during the pandemic, when interest rates were in the 2s and 3s, where a buyer literally couldn't ask for anything. You overpaid for the house, you waived your right to an appraisal, you paid whatever the seller wanted if you really wanted that house, and you took what they gave you, to now a point where buyers can ask for these things is pretty staggering to a lot of people. And in many ways and in many metrics, not just in Denver but nationwide, you could say that the pendulum has swung from it being a seller's market to very much a buyer's market. Now, one of the biggest factors we talk about, what does this mean to you? Well, right now, and I've said for a while, the real estate market operates off of emotions. Whether you are selling a house, buying a house, doing both, there's a lot that goes through your mind and there's a lot that goes through your gut. And as interest rates went up, we saw buyers go through the emotion of hearing that interest rates had been, again, 2-3% for the longest time, to hearing now they're in the 4s, now they're in the 5s, now they're in the 6s, now they're in the 7s and 8s. And that took an emotional hit to them. It took a while for buyers to get used to hearing it and to be able to wrap their head around it and plan for the purchase they were going to make. Now, sellers still continued to hear that their homes would sell quickly. There still wasn't that much inventory. So if you put your home on the market, odds are you were going to get a decent offer on it. Your home was going to sell, again, relatively quickly, and off you would go. But as this market has slowed down, as listing has stayed on the market, it's the seller's turn to go through this emotional roller coaster of recognizing that your home may not sell in a short period of time. You may be on the market for multiple weeks, if not multiple months, before someone comes in with a solid offer. And as a mortgage lender, the conversation I have with buyers, people love to use the term, it's a good time to buy, it's a good time to sell. And sometimes it gets overused. But currently, right now, as of the end of August 2024, it may be one of the most interesting and opportunistic times for a person to buy a home that we've seen in over a decade, or certainly the last 5 years. The reason being is this: interest rates have come down. Are they as good as they were back during the pandemic? Absolutely not. They're still multiple points higher. However, because sellers are really trying to offload their properties, these homes have been sitting on the market for a while, buyers can approach these sellers asking for concessions to lower their interest rate, again, either permanently or temporarily. They can ask them to pay for closing costs. They can ask them to pay for repairs. They can go through their due diligence on a house with a full inspection. And these are all steps that they couldn't have made before. So if they can get to an interest rate somewhere midway between where we were and where we are now, they're in perhaps the best position that they could possibly be in. Now, I said at the beginning of this video, correction or crash. Let's be very clear. There will be no real estate or housing crash. Anybody who thinks that just is not looking at data. They are simply looking at what happened in 2007, 2008, and they are imagining in their head, of course it'll happen again. Right now, you have so much equity that people have built into their homes. There are less than 2% of homes in the entire nation that are underwater. The rest all have equity. There is no crash coming. But there may be a correction, and a correction is anywhere from 5 to 10% of sales prices. And when you talk about how much homes appreciated during the pandemic, it only makes sense that to some extent, those prices have to come down. For affordability to be met, you have to have a combination of rates coming down, income going up, and home prices adjusting. Now, you're likely not going to get all three, so one has to give more than the other. Rates will help, home prices will have to bridge the rest of that gap. And you're seeing it. When someone gives you concessions or pays for your closing costs, that is them reducing the amount of money they are bringing back. To them, it is no different than lowering the sales price itself. It just tends to be more beneficial to you to receive those concessions. So now the question becomes, if you're even thinking about buying a home in the Denver metro or Colorado for that matter, what are some of the things that you should be thinking about? Well, first, you need to identify the make me move home. You need to identify, what is it that I want out of this home? What do I want versus what do I need? Where is the house? Does that matter to you? I know people who need to be in a specific location. They want to be 5 minutes from work, or they want to be a few minutes from a certain activity, or maybe family members. Whereas some people, they may be able to choose any suburb, any area of Colorado they want. What does the house have to have? Is it a single family, a townhome, a condo? Does it have 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms? Does it have a garage? Does it have a big backyard? Does it have an open floor plan where you can host a lot of people? Does it have a finished basement? Maybe that man cave? These are all things that help you start to apply what you're looking for and to narrow that focus. Having certainty will really help you, especially in a market that can be quite confusing and quite emotional. And then you certainly want to think about amenities and lifestyle. People who want to get outside and enjoy the Rocky Mountains a lot might look to live and on the western slope so that they can be closer to those mountains. Whereas somebody who really doesn't care about mountains and doesn't intend to go hiking, they may be more apt to live in the heart of Denver or on the eastern side of town. Second big thing I'm talking to people about if you're thinking about buying a home is really thinking about that budget. 3 houses I always start people with. Describe the house to me, including that location. Wave that magic wand. What is the house all about? What's the monthly payment you want to aim for? And when you think about that monthly cost, what is your overall monthly cost? What other debts are you paying on? Car payments, student loans, credit cards. as we look at that entire debt picture, what's a monthly payment that is going to make you feel comfortable? And what's the number that you do not want to go over no matter what, even if the house checks every single box imaginable? And then last, what's the down payment? What is the comfortable amount out of pocket, whether it is a dollar amount or a percentage that you want to apply to a home? If you have those three things, an idea of where and what the house is all about, the amount monthly you want to pay for it, and the amount that you'd like to put down, a plan can be put together. And if those three things are even in the same ballpark to each other, you've got a good chance. Now, I would always advise people as you're looking at that, keep in mind that what you qualify for may be different than your budget. Sometimes people will qualify for more home than they want. So if you're chatting with a lender and they tell you you qualify for an $800,000 house, you want to make sure you understand what the payment is going to be on said $800,000 house. And I would tell people who are thinking about renting, obviously there's nothing wrong with that. There's a time and place for renting, especially for people who are moving to a new city, a new state, a new area. You may want to rent to get started. I would just encourage anybody, depending on what you're trying to rent, take a look at what it would look like to buy a similar property if you can. We've helped a lot of people who know they're going to be here for a handful of years. They started to look at rentals, especially single family homes, and they realized if I'm going to pay that much in rent, I might as well explore, and many of them ended up buying a house instead and hopefully getting ahead on the appreciation curve as interest rates go down and home prices probably start to increase again. And the last thing I would mention today is that if you are on the home search, do not ignore homes that have been on the market for a while. So one of the common trends we see in real estate is when a house sits on the market for a while, or if it was pending for sale and then it came back, that something has to be wrong with it. The fact is there just aren't a lot of buyers in this market right now. And as I mentioned earlier, for the first time in decades, there's a lot of homes to choose from. So buyers can be picky. Sometimes, for reasons that I don't necessarily agree with, they might get under contract on one house and then terminate on that because they want to go and buy another. So these homes that are sitting on the market for a while, do your due diligence on them, but don't write them off just because they've been on the market for a while. You might pass up a really good deal. To wrap, I will tell you, my predictions for the future are relatively simple. I think interest rates will tend to stay higher for a bit longer, but gradually decrease, getting into the fives as we go into next year. I also believe that home prices will stay somewhat steady, and there will be a point where as interest rates get into the high to mid fives, you'll start to see homes appreciate again at probably a pretty aggressive point because you have a lot of people with pent up rage waiting to go buy a home. So eventually buyers will come back to market. If you're thinking about buying in the meantime, what I would stress to you is that especially if you qualify for the home you want, you are in an advantageous moment because there's not a lot of competition in this market right now. You could absolutely take advantage of that. As interest rates come down, you will see more buyers enter the market. Now, that's not doomsday. I think as rates come down, obviously it brings more buyers to the market. It's beneficial in general. But if you have the opportunity to strike now, swing the bat. And if that's something I can help with, I'd love to have a conversation with you. So the number and email you see on your screen, know that I am always the person answering those phone calls, answer those texts, answer those emails. There, winning if you need me. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everett. That was Correction or Crash, New Opportunities in the Denver Housing Market. Till I see you next time, peace.